This is the Bible Ranger, and today is part 3 of Giants in the Bible. Aliens, or are they Nephilim demons? All right, giants after the flood. That's our specialty today. We talked about plenty about giants before the flood, but the Bible in Genesis chapter 6, it says there were giants before and after. All the giants died from the flood. There was no surviving giants. There are some literatures out there that says that there was a particular giant that hung on to the Noah's Ark. That's fictitious. So how do they reappear? So there are three theories out there. There was the sons of God were, the interpretation whether they were the sons of Seth, married Cain's evil daughters, which comes from a story named Lilith, which is a long other story. Another theory is the new fallen angels took more women after the flood to create more offspring. It's kind of what they did the first time. The third interpretation or theory, some of the genetic bloodlines of the Nephilims got through in the actual ark. Now, you know how I am with this. To be intellectually honest, the Bible's not clear on this specific teaching, so they all have a problem. Okay, so we must surmise with the clues that we get from the Bible and some of the extra biblical books to put the story together. That's what I'm going to try to do today. All right, number one, some seminaries out there still teach that the sons of Seth theory, okay, that they started, this theory started about 400 AD, and it was made famous by a person named Thomas Aquinas, which a monk in the Catholic Church in the 13th century. And it's still popular in some seminaries. However, I think there's flaws to that theory. How do we get giants from humans with other humans that were evil? Just because you're evil, I mean, we're all evil, we're all sinful. How do you get giants from that? Now, the daughters of Cain after the flood, well, the Bible's pretty specific that there's only 3 that survived, 3 males and their wives with Noah and his, total of 8. So I don't get where you could still talk about Seth's line. Number 2, there's a second incursion of fallen angels that actually took more women after the flood. And that's more plausible, but I think there's reason to believe that wasn't the case. With the punishment that's talked about in 2 Peter, 2nd chapter, 4th verse, and also mentioned in the book of Enoch, chapter 68, it says that basically those angels that made it with the women, they were put into everlasting torment, basically forever and ever. And we talked about Enoch chapter 68, where Michael was shaken talking to Raphael, and that who can bear such punishment. So I don't think the angels were, lack of a better word, that crazy to actually do that again. Now we need to come up with another way. So I believe this one. I believe, and this has nothing to do with affecting your salvation. This is just trying to be more biblically correct if possible. And Noah and his sons, they were perfect genetically. They were untainted, okay? But according to the book of Jubilee, Noah found his 3 sons' wives only 7 days before the flood. So it doesn't seem like there was a big selection to go by. And if you think about it, Noah actually married somewhere around 500 years. And if you think about that, it's like he's thinking, well, this whole world's correct. Where can I find a wife? And apparently God found him one in his 500th year. All right. So that would leave 1 or possibly 2 of the wives of the sons of Noah that had a bit of Nephilim blood, heavily diluted, but still in their genes. For example, here would be the genes, the 2X genes of the wives, and you can see where their contribution, the left side here, they can contaminate the actual gene pool. And this right side here would be the sons, which were perfect. All right, so why would God let that happen? And that's a great question, okay? But to be intellectually honest again, that would apply to all of them. So they all have that problem. And realize that God knows what he's doing. And even though it looks like Satan will try to get in God's way for his plans, like he did, he killed Seth, and then he did the giant, and then he tried to kill the Messiah. God knows what's going on. Okay, and God uses it for his purpose. And to be totally blunt, he's God and we're not. All right, let's talk about the three sons of Noah for a minute. Noah had three sons, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. Some teach that the brothers went to different parts of the world, and they did eventually. Like Ham would be Israel and Egypt and this part of Africa here, and some of the parts of Saudi Arabia. And Shem, from the Shemites, where the line of the Jews come from, they were mainly in the Middle East. And Japheth, they were more of a European, even Asia, as you can see from this map here. All right. Part of the reason that God confused the languages from the Tower of Babel was because they would not move. God told them that he wanted them to spread out and multiply throughout the world. They would not do it. They wanted the Tower of Babel. Not only was it evil for other reasons, check out my other episodes 2, 3, and 4, but also they were congregated there. They wanted to make the capital of the world, and God didn't want that. So in confusing the languages, they were able to spread out. And of course, so they didn't spread out as soon as they came from the ark. They congregated for hundreds of years. The Tower of Babel came, and then they were made because of language differences to actually spread out. All right, now I'll talk about, this is Noah here and his three sons, and I'll talk about each one kind of quick. The Shem's line, the Shemites, had no giants at all, and you can't have any giants in there because that would be a contamination of the Nephilim, and this is what Jesus came from, and that has to be perfect from demonic blood. Japheth, I don't know of any giants myself, okay, but this graph comes from Rob Skeeber, and he says there were some there. I haven't studied that part yet because there's so many from Ham that keeps you busy. So one day I'll have to look into that. But from Ham, you had three sons, Canaan, Mizraim, Put, and Cush. All right, so after the flood, and some time happened where Noah was on land, and he planted some grapes, and obviously they matured enough to have grapes and make wine. So some time passed. He got drunk. Noah got drunk, and he was in his dwelling, and apparently Ham did something where it's called that he uncovered Noah's nakedness. Now, I don't want to go into that right now. This is not the forum for that. But basically, Noah found out, and he cursed his grandson. He didn't curse Ham, but he cursed his grandson. There's a couple of theories on that. One is that by cursing him, maybe Satan was able to do more of what he wanted, hence more giants, because most of the giants come from Canaan, which is one of the sons right here of Noah. Most of the giants came from there. Another theory was that when Noah saw the son born, he saw that he had 6 fingers and 6 toes. And because of that, he cursed it. There's an old teaching that the curse was that Ham went towards black people, and that was the curse of slavery. I don't believe that at all. That's just human interpretation there. And I don't even think that's taught as much anymore. But that was an old teaching. I just wanted to make that aware. All right, sometimes in the Bible, God reports something, and it doesn't have, he reports it without judgment. He just gives you information on it. And sometimes you have to do a deeper study. I think the Bible is made in such a way where it's not made to be read once. It's made to be studied your whole life. Because us humans, we get lazy, and you say, "Oh, I've read that book, I've seen that movie." The Bible's not made like that. It's made for our growth, to feed our spirits. And in order to do that, you have to intake the Bible every day. So I think sometimes some things are made cryptically, and then you just have to study it out. So about Nimrod for a second. Nimrod, we're still talking about Ham and his 4 sons. Now Put, there seems to be no information about Put. That's one of his sons. So we won't talk about that. There seems to be one line of giant through Cush. Ham had Cush, and Cush seemed to be a rebellious individual. He actually named his son Nimrod, which means let us rebel. That's what it means. Who would name their son when the son is just an infant, let us rebel? Obviously, Cush has some problems, some issues that are not very clear in the Bible. So Nimrod grew up with some attitude or some crazy ideas where he became, actually the Bible almost compliments him when he became a mighty hunter. Some people say a mighty hunter of souls, but he was the first king in that world after the flood. And he was the one that built the 5 cities, including Babel, which came from the Tower of Babylon. So the Bible says that he began to be a mighty one, which in interpretation, it can mean this: profane God's name. He did something to defile himself, to profane himself. Nephal, which has to do with fallen ones, like Nephilims. He did something to do with rituals, or something to do with sexual rituals, which a lot of that has to do with witchcraft. So some scholars say he found some literature after the flood that showed him how to go back into Nephilism, something like that, where I don't know, he sold his soul to Satan. We don't really know. The point is that he was really involved so much with the demonic forces that he was used as to be the father of the mystery religions with his wife Semiramis. And that's in the episodes 2, 3, and 4, where all the religions of the world that are not from the Lord come from this mystery religion. And this is still mentioned in the book of Revelation. So it's survived all these years. So he did something to himself. I don't think it was actually through genetics, but he did something where he actually became a Nephilim. And he goes by other names. Baal, which this is the same Baal the Bible talks about throughout the whole Old Testament. Gilgamesh, and we all know that from history. Apollo, Molech, Marduk, Dagon. I believe that's the fish god, half fish and half man. Orion, and Nimrod. Like I said, he was a great builder of towns and cities, and a great conqueror apparently. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, where it mentions that there were giants before the flood, and from the sons of God, the fallen angels, but also after the flood. In Numbers 13:33, it says that giants came from giants, or the sons of Anak. And before the flood, basically they came from fallen angels, but after the flood, they came from giants. So this is one verse that you can surmise that it's not the same. They didn't come from fallen angels anymore, but possibly to the genetic. And I'm not saying that as dogmatic. I'm just saying that makes the most sense to me after so much studying of it. Now, these are some actual architectural artifacts of Nimrod with different names. And you can see how he towers over some of these people. And this could have took years that he became taller. Here, he was called a great hunter. And you see him fighting lions in many of these. This is actually a sword going through the lion here. In one of them, he's holding the lion by the neck. Here, there's an arrow in the head of the lion, and there's a sword going into the lion. And I would say this, I was going to say this is the size of a regular man, but he doesn't have a beard, so this might be a young man. Here's a picture of him with horses. You can see how he towers over these horses. And many horses are, 7 feet tall, right about the head size. And it could have been, I don't know if this was him, I think it was, where this tower of a man here is obviously fighting other men that are much smaller than he is. So I'm trying to show that maybe these are pictures throughout time periods, because he lived a long time. Not through the Bible, doesn't say, but through other biblical, extra biblical books, it talks about that he had some time to him. Here, he looks humongous, well muscular. Look at the size of those calves. And he shows a lion here. And it's not a kitten, it's a lion, because it's got a mane on it. And he's just holding it with his hands. And obviously you would have to be of high stature to do that. All right, let's talk about the promised land with Moses. Several hundred years after the flood, Moses tries to take the nation of Israel to the promised land. And it's the land of milk and honey and giants. Okay, that's in Exodus 3:8. Now, I'm going to say something here that's going to answer a question that if you read the Bible, you would think, why in the world did Joshua kill every man and woman and child from certain people? That sounds like genocide or homicidal thinking. I mean, Lord, what are you thinking about? I mean, you got to think about that. This is going to answer that question, why God did that. This is one of the statements that I mean that God sometimes just reports stuff. You got to dig into it to actually find out why. Partly, the reason was that God did not want the nation of Israel to be infected by their culture of their gods, because throughout the Bible, Israel keeps falling into other gods and their cultures. But I think the main reason was because they had the Nephilim gene. And this here is a picture of the Israel, before it was taken by the Jews. And you see here the Hivites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hittites. All these were giants. This whole nation of Israel was full of giants. So when the 12 went to report and 10 came back bad report, like, look, it does have a lot of milk and honey and it's great. Look at the size of these grapes, but we can't beat these people. And Joshua and Caleb said, no, we can do it. It's a feat, but we can do it. And that was the main reason why the nation of Israel was walking through the desert for 40 years. So I'll break down on the giants a little bit more. So the line of Shem, where the Jews came from, that's no giants. That was pure genetically. Japheth, according to Rob Skiber, had some giants. And the Ham had many giants. And Mizran, which is one of the other sons of Ham, there's a report of only one giant in that bloodline. I think it's a possibility that because that giant was when David was alive, which is some time after Joshua and Caleb. So it's possible, a theory, it's possible that when Joshua and Caleb were killing all the giants, they were fleeing to other places. And I believe the parents or the ancestors of Goliath came over to Philistines and abided there. I don't think he was necessary from the Philistines. I think there was a verse that said that he dwelled with them. But I'll check into that some more. So what I'm saying with that is that the only line, we don't know anything about Put. I think with Cush's line right here, and Nimrod was the only giant, I don't think it was genetically. I don't think from Mizraim was genetically. I think the only one with the curse was from Canaan that was genetic problems. And I said all that. North America. Why are we talking about North America? Or I believe the news of Joshua's success with Caleb as a giant killer got around. So the giants fled to other places and they started traveling. I mean, they had advanced technology. And some traveled to the Americas. The Indians, our American Indians, they have stories where the giants were so big that they can actually hunt them by foot, and they can pick one up as they were hunting, and they can actually rip a limb off and just eat it. And another thing that's very interesting, that the origin of when they come in and they greet you and they say how they lift their hand up was to see if you had 6 fingers. There's other stories of giants in the Indian culture. Now, they don't all speak the same. They don't all say how. That's not the important part. The important part is the hand gesture. And also in America, we have something called the American Stonehenge. I don't know if you know of that, but there's a lot of giant artifacts that we have. We found, remember 100 years ago, I talked in the last episode, that there was tons of articles out there, over 100, where they found people 7 feet tall, 8 feet tall, of giant skeletons, and their red hair. It seems to be that a lot of them had red hair. Now going to South America, if you ever go visit there, the architecture, it's incredible of the sizes of rocks of these. I happened to go there a few years ago, and look at the size of these rocks. I don't know how many tons that is, but in this architect, this rock up here, above here, how do you put that in there without sliding off? And then you're fitting this one here. You're fitting this one here. How do you keep it in place while this one that's not even sliding off? Let me just, it's like they're showing off. I mean, look down here. This humongous rock, it looks almost like a passage, and it's complicated on purpose. And this alone is amazing, but to what I found out to be even more amazing, that in between all these rocks, rock on rock, it is so tight. You can't fit a razor in there. You can't fit a sheet of paper. Nothing. It's phenomenal. It's like they're showing off. All right, what about the UFOs? I believe that the Nephilims or the fallen angels fled from this world, and they took the advanced technology, and some took to space. And these artifacts here, this is in stone, there's what looks to be 4 sets of aircraft. That looks perfectly like a helicopter. And these side views of aircraft, they seem to have a vertical stabilizer, which is the part that goes up and down here. That looks like another type of aircraft. And they have jewelry. It looks like jewelry anyway, but it's artifacts. That's about 2 inches. It's actually probably actual size here. A little bit less than 2 inches. That looks like a perfect plane. It looks pretty close. So I would not put it to, I think it's a plausible theory that they took their technology and they went to space. That was one of the reasons I was trying to show you those rocks, that how in the world can they do that? They're not trying to build a building. It's inefficient. They're trying to make a statement here. And I believe they're not intergalactical, where they're like billions and billions of miles away and they had other lives and other planets out there. I believe they're interdimensional. It seems like throughout the Bible, angels appear and reappear at will, like going from one dimension to another. And fallen angels could do the same thing. They're still angels. Or the fallen angels showed the Nephilims how to do it. So I believe the Nephilims, fearing God's punishment, what happened to the original fallen angels in Tartarus, they're like, I'm not going before my time to the everlasting chains of hell, the lowest part of hell. I'm going to find another way to keep themselves alive, because they now have bodies, and the bodies are not going to last forever. So they come to Earth. They do experiments. They do abductions. And in these experiments, they're trying to see how they can prolong their life. They make another body. They make what I'm calling alien suits for their disembodied spirits. And this is how they procreate, in a sense. So what does this have to do with the end times? And this is what I'm going to cover in the next one. I'm going to try to put it together, and I think this will lead to something called the Great Deception. And it's really important. I know a lot of pastors, or almost all pastors, won't cover this, but I'm going to try to cover this. And I want to get people ready for a possible great deception that's coming. I mean, the Bible does say that even if it was possible, even the very elect will be deceived. So hopefully I can shed some light into this in the next video. So Don't alienate yourself from God. I know it sounds a little corny, but it has good value. In Hebrews chapter 2, verse 3, this is this verse. How shall we escape, and it's talking about the punishments of hell, if we neglect such a great salvation? And that would be Christ dying on the cross for us, for our sins. It was declared at first by the Lord, by Jesus, and it was attested to us by those who heard. So it was eyewitnesses were there to actually see it. And you can look at that verse and you reread it, and you see that there's a pleading there, a concern for your soul. And as Christians, we really care for your soul if you're not a Christian yourself. And sometimes that could be a pain in the neck. I get it. Okay, but we really want you to follow the Lord, and that's the reason we do this, and that's the reason for this videos. And I would encourage you to download them and keep them as your own personal library. I'm going to try to do like 100 of them, because I think when it gets popular, I think a lot of these, they don't have a lot of PC in them, so they'll probably get taken out. I don't know how to reinstate it, so that's what I would encourage you to do. So if you found this information to be valuable, please subscribe, thumbs up, share it. And this is the Bible Ranger, keeping it simple but yet rich in content. Thank you very much.